Every year, 75,000 Americans are hospitalized from burn injuries. 10 TV News reporter Kevin Landers takes us inside one of the top burn centers in the country at the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center. These patients are sharing their stories with us, but as you can imagine, their injuries are severe, and some of the images you are about to see are graphic.
Skin. It is our body's largest organ. But when it burns,
911, what's your emergency?
doctors have to act quickly.
Now, this is good skin.
Burned skin must be removed to prevent infection so new skin can grow. But the majority of people who arrive at the burn center at Ohio State don't require major surgery. They've been burned by common kitchen accidents, like scalding from boiling water.
It's probably the most painfulest thing I've ever been through.
Melissa McIntyre burned the skin on her foot when she says the handle of her slow cooker broke. Zuni Alonso burned both of her arms during a pressure cooker accident.
I forced it to open it, and all that steam and the beans and everything came over me.
For these outpatients, a special bandage lined with silver is applied to the wound. The alloys of silver help fight infection. This is how Zuni Alonso's arm looked before her bandage was applied. After a few weeks, her swelling is gone.
We're going to want you to use your fingers as much as possible.
19-year-old Marcus Coachman is having his bandages removed as well. He didn't suffer a burn, rather frostbite, that took the skin off his fingers.
I couldn't use my hands at all. It was terrible.
Like Marcus, nearly 2,000 outpatients visit the burn center every year for minor burns.
So lay on your belly and maybe do some overhead stretches that way too.
But for others, like 48-year-old Darren Dean of Columbus,
it's almost like a bad dream.
The recovery lasts longer. The former car painter told us he was working at home mixing paint chemicals when all of a sudden,
I caught fire. And it just went, I mean, it was mostly just a flash fire, but it was so quick that it just caught my skin.
He suffered second-degree burns on 30% of his body, the kind of burn that affects nerves and permanently destroys sweat glands. Those burns require daily wrappings of medicated bandages.
Each time we change the dressing, we know it hurts, but we're slowly starting to bulldoze that land clear so that we can start to get that path for the skin to grow.
Bring them down at your side if you can.
There are also daily physical therapy sessions to stretch the skin so it doesn't stiffen.
It's kind of pretty amazing how well that everything healed up.
After 35 days, Darren Dean is finally going home.
We're in the business of beating the odds.
The odds of surviving a massive burn are better than ever because of burn centers like this one.
In the almost 32 years that I've been a burn surgeon, I'm seeing patients surviving today that 32 years ago would never even have made it for 24 hours.
At Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center, Kevin Landers, 10 TV News.
Amazing work. The average burn patient spends about 5 days in the Ohio State Burn Center. You can read more about the center by going to 10tv.com and clicking on featured links. Tomorrow, we are introducing you to what doctors say is a medical miracle. This man suffered burns so bad, doctors were not sure he'd survive. Find out what happened and how he beat the odds. Right now, Michael Clark of Newark is living a life doctors didn't think was possible, and tonight he's telling his story for the first time. Clark was severely burned when his house exploded because of natural gas in May of 2012. As part of our look inside the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center Burn Center, 10 TV's Kevin Landers shows us how a skilled group of doctors and nurses is helping burn patients beat the odds. As you can imagine, Clark's injuries are severe, and some of the images you are about to see are graphic.
I went outside to smoke a cigarette, and the house blew up.
That's all Michael Clark remembers from the night his world literally burned down.
The garage exploded, and the rest of the house imploded.
Michael says his first instinct, run back to the house and rescue his fiancée and 10-month-old daughter.
If we're all going to perish, we'll perish together.
He nearly died trying to save them.
When I met him in our living room, his chest was still on fire.
His fiancée calls him a hero.
He was just so aware that we were still in the house that he came back in. I mean, that's amazing. A miracle, a matter of fact.
It would be one of many miracles.
Hey, how you doing?
Nearly 2 years since the explosion,
How you doing?
Good.
doctors say Michael Clark is a living example
It's Daddy's princess.
of how burn victims are getting a second chance at life.
This is actually the room I was in.
After the fire, for 4 months, doctors and nurses in the Ohio State Burn Center fought to save Michael's life.
It's the reason why you go into medicine and do this, is to make people's lives better.
The flames from the fire were so intense, the heat burned the pigment off of his face.
I burned 79.25% of my body.
Many of his burns were 3rd degree, what doctors call deep tissue burns. His fiancée says he was almost unrecognizable.
His face was completely white. And then I was like, that's when I realized how bad it was.
But it got worse. While in the intensive care unit, Michael's organs began to shut down.
Everything that probably could shut down, except for my heart.
And when nurses in the ICU felt Michael had given up on life, they brought to his bedside the one thing they knew would give him hope: his daughter.
That was what he needed to see that he needs to keep fighting.
His fight required numerous skin grafts from donor sites on his body. It would be his best defense against infection and survival.
We've made great strides in survivability.
Dr. Larry Jones leads the OSU Burn Center team.
And he doesn't need any antibiotics for this.
A surgeon with 3 decades of experience in advanced burn trauma. He says when Michael arrived, the prognosis wasn't good.
He tried to die several times.
But he survived, and Dr. Jones says that's what this burn center is all about: beating the odds.
You have a patient like that, taken somewhere else, probably would not survive.
Doctors say Michael Clark still has a long way to go for a complete recovery.
So without this burn center, where do you think you'd be today?
Probably dead.
He hopes his story will inspire others that there is life after suffering a massive burn like this.
Don't give up. You know, just keep fighting. I beat the odds. Ohio State University saved my life.
Kevin Landers, 10 TV News.
Amazing. Michael Clark says he makes it a point to visit the burn center as often as he can to thank the staff for saving his life.
New tonight, even if you haven't seen one, chances are it has seen you, and you know what? It's maybe even recorded you.
We're talking about drones, these unmanned aerial vehicles. They are raising serious concerns in Ohio about their ability to invade your privacy and safety. Last month, a Springfield man flew his drone over a fatal car crash. He was arrested after the authorities say he refused to land his drone when they warned him it would interfere with an incoming emergency helicopter.
10 TV reporter Kevin Landers joins us now with a closer look at the use of drones in Ohio. Kevin.
Well, drones come in all shapes and sizes. These high-tech model airplanes are getting a lot of attention, not only because of what they can do, but because of what people don't want them to do.
This is an unmanned aerial vehicle, commonly known as a drone.
It's completely safe. I'm doing it hands-free right now. There's absolutely no way that I could crash it or fly into somebody.
For hobbyists like Matthew Snyder,
it's a stress reliever for me.
He says it's the closest thing to flying a real plane without sitting in the cockpit.
And I just have a great time doing it.
Snyder owns more than 10 drones, including one with a laser pointer and a spotlight. He says he uses it for security to document hunters who come on his parents' 350-acre property.
If I see somebody on the land at night, I can turn on my camera. I can videotape the person at night because I have a high-intensity laser and actually pinpoint to them.
9 states have laws that regulate the use of drones, either by private citizens or law enforcement. Ohio is not one of them. Here in the Buckeye State, for as little as a few dollars, anyone can buy and fly one. No training required. At this Columbus hobby store, they sell 400 drones a month.
We spend hours per customer here in the store making sure they understand every single mode, every function, what could go wrong.
And when something does go wrong, the outcomes are frightening. On the internet, you can find a wedding photographer crashing his drone into the bride and groom. Another crashing into a grandstand crowded with people. Oh! And the dawn of the drone is causing a lot of headaches for the Federal Aviation Administration, which controls the nation's airspace. Because the FAA has classified drones as aircraft, it doesn't want them used for commercial purposes, like deliveries or news coverage. The rules state drones must be flown in view, no higher than 400 feet, and you're not supposed to fly them over populated areas. But that's not stopping people like Bernie Fernandez here in Columbus.
You can capture about anything.
His drone has flown over the mall at Easton, over crowds outside Nationwide Arena, and even the Horseshoe at Ohio State. Fernandez says he also helps commercial businesses improve their websites by flying over and shooting video of their property. But he won't be flying near Port Columbus anytime soon.
We were too close to the airport, and several black SUVs rolled up and said, bring it down.
He's even caught some grief in his own neighborhood.
Like a guy told me, you fly it over my property, I'm shooting it down.
As the size and cost of these machines come down, more and more people will be able to afford them, and that's raising concerns about privacy and safety. Already 2 Ohio lawmakers have introduced bills to try to silence machines similar to this one.
I just want to make sure that we have something in place to make certain that if drones will be used for residents in Ohio, that there are some guidelines.
State Representative Anthony DeVitas is not in favor of restricting drones for hobbyists. He is concerned about their use in police work.
If one of these devices is going to be used to invade someone's privacy, that definitely needs to be addressed as well.
The Ohio Prosecuting Attorneys Association is fighting that bill and one other. John Murphy is the executive director.
We don't want to see any legislation that we think might put us in a difficult position when we have evidence that could be valuable evidence from a drone.
Until any legislation is passed, the sky's the limit for these machines. Machines that some see as a menace, while others view them as the future of aviation. Kevin Landers, 10 TV News.
We had the biggest fun with that
We
drone
really
here
did.
in the studio tonight. The Federal Aviation Administration has yet to establish rules, though, regarding drones, but hopes to have something in place by the end of next year.
Certainly is an interesting debate. In order to use them for commercial purposes, the FAA requires you apply for a waiver. See raw video from the drones and weigh in on our poll question. Should the government regulate drones? You'll find the story on the homepage, 10tv.com.
A West Columbus grandmother says she's being harassed on Facebook for posting pictures of her granddaughter posing in what she calls fun photos.
The grandmother says the pictures of the baby were just a joke, but not everyone thought they were funny.
Reporter Kevin Landers live in the newsroom to explain why the photos got the attention of Children's Services.
Well, Jackie Sheets of West Columbus tells me she won't be posting photos on Facebook of her granddaughter in posed positions anymore. She says the photos created a firestorm that even got law enforcement involved out of concerns of potential child abuse.
Babies posing as flowers, in candy, in mixing bowls, even a hat box are all over the internet. They are generally seen as cute. But when Jackie Sheets posted this photo of her granddaughter with a pacifier duct taped to her cheeks, or this photo with the 2-month-old in a roasting pan with potatoes, people on Facebook didn't find it funny or cute.
We're not horrible people that they're making us out to be.
Sheik says the duct tape was only on her granddaughter long enough to take the photo. She says her prop photos are getting blown out of proportion.
It started over just a joke. You know, we put a little bit of tape on the pacifier just because we were being silly. You know, we wanted to share it with the friends because everybody knows us, know that we, you know, play around like that.
What she saw as playful photos, law enforcement did not. She says the sheriff came to her door and so did Children's Services out of concern the child was in danger.
We don't do that.
We would never harm our children.
Sheik says she's taken posed photos of other family children all her life and no one in the family objected. But when these latest photos hit social media, the family says the harassment began almost immediately.
I'm getting all kinds of friends requests too from people we don't know for that reason.
It's been a big toll on the family. We almost feel like we have to relocate.
As for posting prop photos of her granddaughter on Facebook in the future, Sheik says never again.
Oh, it's definitely taught me a lesson.
Yeah,
that, you know, what we think is funny that other people don't. It's definitely taught us a lesson.
Now, the child's mother says she has no problems with the photo. The family says it's glad the sheriff and Children's Services came to their house to investigate. They tell me so far they've not heard anything about charges. We did contact the sheriff's department, but have not heard back. Well, what do you think of these photos? We'd like to hear your opinion. Go to 10tv.com and we'll take your poll question. Reporting live from the newsroom, Kevin Landers, 10 TV News.
Natalie Schull says she waited years to find out if anyone was going to take her story seriously and punish the trooper who took advantage of her. 10 TV News reporter Kevin Landers spoke with her in an interview you'll see only on 10 TV.
On November 19, 2010, Ohio State Police Trooper Brian Lee responded to a car crash in Pataskala. Natalie Schull admits she was drunk at the time, but what she never imagined was the trooper who came to her help would end up fondling her.
He basically took advantage of me.
Natalie Schull says she'll never forget her encounter with former Ohio Highway Patrol Trooper Brian Lee.
I don't think anybody deserves that type of behavior. Granted, don't get me wrong, I was drunk, but still, you don't take advantage of anybody like that.
Schull crashed her car and says while in handcuffs, Trooper Lee began to frisk her.
I was frisked like twice, and then he decided to frisk me a third time while in handcuffs and told me that we're gonna do this right here.
She's referring to an area of the trooper's car out of view of his dash camera. According to this plea agreement, Lee pressed his body up against her, causing his penis to rub against her hands, which were cuffed behind her body. He went inside her shirt and bra and touched her bare breast. Schull says she froze in fear.
What's going on? Do I scream? Do I yell? Oh, no, I can't. I'm in the middle of nowhere. There's nobody around. And what's going to happen if I scream and yell?
After the ordeal, she says Lee allowed her to sit in the front seat of his cruiser and offered to take her home.
Quite honestly, I probably should have went to jail that night, but instead, I got to ride home in the front seat.
But her encounter with Officer Lee didn't end there. She says the following day, he came to her Pataskala home.
I have no idea what his intentions were, but I was too afraid to answer the door.
Schull was one of 4 women Trooper Lee admits to have fondled, took nude photos of, or had sex with after he pulled them over. Schull says she's always wondered if Trooper Lee was ever going to be punished for the events 4 years ago. She's glad justice finally arrived.
I'm glad something's happening because those girls deserve justice also.
Lee pled guilty to the crime and could serve 9 years in prison when he's sentenced.
I hope he gets what he deserves.
The patrol says it took a while to put this case together because in many of the traffic stops, no ticket was written and Lee let them go. Lee pled guilty for violating the woman's civil rights as well as cyberstalking. You can read more about this entire case by going to the web extra of my story on 10tv.com.
And Kevin, she says she's sure there are other victims out there. What does the Highway Patrol say about that?
The patrol says right now they know of at least 4 that they have proof of. But if other women are out there, they say they want to hear from them.
All right, Kevin, thank you.
Thanks.
Delaware County is seeing more than a boom in population. It's experiencing an explosion of people signing up to get a license to carry a gun. Over the past 3 years, the Sheriff's Department says it has seen a 66% increase, and it's now allowing people to register online for appointments to get a concealed carry weapon license. As 10 TV reporter Kevin Landers explains, the majority of people looking to arm themselves might just surprise you.
My name is Denise DeBall. I'm 56 years old.
My name is Vicki Schull. I have a 16-month-old daughter.
When it comes to carrying a concealed weapon, men used to be the ones packing heat. Not so anymore. According to the Delaware County Sheriff's Office, women now make up nearly half of the people in Delaware County that have signed up to learn how to legally defend themselves with a handgun in public. People like Denise Diebold.
I'm a small, old woman. What am I going to do if some 200-pound young guy comes up?
Diebold received her concealed handgun license 8 months ago. She says she wanted to avoid becoming a victim.
A 300-pound sumo wrestler could come through the door, and if I have my gun, I've got a chance.
Vicki Schull says she just signed up for her CCW course. She says her decision to get a gun was to protect her family.
It's my responsibility to do my part to take care of myself in the best way that I know how.
Those who teach CCW courses say just because you pass the course shouldn't leave you with the impression that you're ready to defend yourself.
This is a perishable skill that needs to be maintained, and if somebody is not willing to make that commitment, you know, there are alternatives. But maybe a loaded gun is not the right thing.
As for Vicki Schull and Denise Diebold, they believe the reason why more women are learning how to shoot is simple. They're no longer relying on someone else for protection.
Women feel more responsible for themselves. They don't expect anyone else to take care of themselves.
Women don't feel like they need to be in the shadows anymore. We don't need to have somebody protect us. I think there's kind of something sexy about being able to stand up for yourself and protect yourself.
In Delaware, Kevin Landers, 10 TV News.
Ohioans must apply for a CCW, and there is a waiting period to receive your license to carry a gun. You must be 21 years old or older to apply. Applicants must get proof of a competency certification. This includes a firearm safety course, which is approved by the state. You must also pass a criminal background check and mental competency check. Visit the featured links section of 10tv.com for a guide to obtain a license and the CCW laws.